And good morning, friends, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a blessing to be here with all of you. I am an alcoholic. My name is David, calling in from beautiful Cape May, New Jersey. And I always anticipate I'm going to remember to ask somebody to read the preamble, but I did not once again. So this time I'm going to ask my comrade, my brother, Robbie W. Would you be so kind, my friend, as to read the preamble? I'll bring it up on the screen if I can find it. Show all windows.
Absolutely, brother.
Oh, here it comes. All right. And there we are.
And here we go. Good morning, group. My name's Robbie, and I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, their strength, and their hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, and does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose here this morning is just to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Back to you, David.
Robbie, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it. And now, if people would be so kind as to join me in inviting God into this meeting today with reciting with me the Serenity Prayer. Or, excuse me, yes, the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Here at the main object big book study, we go line by line through the first 164 pages of the big book. And as most of you know, what we do is, in order to help us grasp the core message of those first 164, and more importantly, share that core message with others, we break it down into 5 categories. And we use highlighters, and the colors there are arbitrary. They're just the ones I chose. Choose your own. But the 5 categories are questions, directions and explanations, those are in green, promises in blue, warnings in pink, and history. There's a bit of history from time to time, and I just leave that blank. So we'll be applying those categories today, as you'll see at the end of the doctor's opinion, and I'm going to put those categories and those colors in the chat as well. So they'll be up there momentarily. So, and we're going line by line, and our format is we'll do that. I'm going to take us line by line through the text and until 7 o'clock. And then at 7, we'll open up the meeting for discussion, questions, so forth. And if we don't have any discussion or questions, we'll just keep reading. Although we might, if we finish, who knows? I have this fantasy that we might finish early. Who knows? We'll see. We'll take it moment by moment. So for those of you who did not hear or who just got here, we are finishing up the doctor's opinion, and I am on page, in the 4th edition, page 31, which is xxxi. And then if you're in the study edition, such as I am and a few of us are, it's Roman numeral page 29. And as I said, the good news is starting next week with page 1, where we'll be starting Bill's story. And then we're all on the same page regardless of what edition you might have. So, what we're doing, this is closing out. So, we got a page and a little bit more, maybe a page and a quarter to go. And we are, as I said, finishing up the doctor's opinion. And the doctor's opinion, there's so much going on there, but we are now, what closes out the doctor's opinion is Dr. Silkworth's statement. He has the doctor's opinion, the hub or the anchor upon which the doctor's opinion is really comes together is through two pieces of writing from Dr. Silkworth. One is a letter, which is a little bit shorter, and the second is a longer statement. So we are coming to the end of the statement, and the statement is quite lengthy to the point where I broke it down into 5 sections, and we're beginning now. We're going to close it out with the 5th section of Dr. Silkworth's statement, and I entitle that section The Power of the Book, and we will see why I chose that in a moment. So in this last section, what's happening is Dr. Silkworth, he really wants to drive the point home. He really wants to make sure that the reader grasp his core message, the thing that, so he really, and how he does that is he's a masterful storyteller. And so what he does is he gives us the point, and then he illustrates it with 2 examples. And actually, that's he doesn't give us the point first. He gives us the example, and then he gives us the point, gives us another example, gives us the point, and then he leaves us with the point. So 3 times. And so we're starting at the top. And what is the solution? Obviously, it's a question. So I have that in orange. Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. And that sentence, I have green in direction. And it's not just explanation, it is actually direction, because look at the example already Dr. Silkworth's providing. He's not going to lecture us. He's going to tell a story from his experience. And I think that is critical. It's a critical example. And it's one that I can certainly benefit from, because my tendency, left to my own devices, is not to tell you about me. My tendency is to just want to pontificate. And that lasts, and that carries the message for about 3 seconds, and then people tune out. So, as I said, Dr. Silkworth wants to make sure that the reader gets the point of his message by, he poses a question and then he's going to answer it. So let's keep that question front and center in our mind. What is the solution? Because he provides a very succinct answer, and he provides it 3 times. But he frames it in stories. So about 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. And I have this in green. You can think of this as explanation. The next sentence I have in green as well. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. And Dr. Silkworth assumes that the reader may be able to relate to that. And what he's talking about is physical deterioration and mental deterioration. And the assumption is that people who come and pick up this book and have read this far have experienced those things. And the next sentence I have as a warning. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. And the next sentence is a warning as well, so I have that in pink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. And you can really tell he's really trying to reach that person who feels like there's no hope. Following, and this next is explanation or direction in green. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury, which I think is an important distinction. And here we go. I want to hit the pause button for a second, and I want to go back to the top of the paragraph, or top of the page, excuse me. Remember, this whole thing is about one question, this whole section. What is the solution? And now, in the next sentence, he tells us, he accepted the plan outlined in this book. That's the point he wants to drive home in this section. That's the point that he wants to drive home in his statement and in the entire chapter or section called The Doctor's Opinion. And he's coming from a place of, you would say, where his position and his experience at the time was revered. Doctors were in 1939 America, doctors, physicians were revered, and they were seen to have the solution. And what he is saying is, what is the solution? It's the plan outlined in this book. So I have that in both direction, green, and blue, for a promise. And I think that's one of the most important promises we have in this entire volume, is that the solution is the plan outlined in this book. The next two sentences I have as promises. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. Actually, three sentences. So that's a promise. Dr. Silkworth said, I had expectations of, basically he is saying, I had expectations of what this man would be like a year, because by then Dr. Silkworth's envisioning, okay, he's going to be even worse, and here's how much worse. But he had a strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features. But there all resemblance ended. And then now he explains. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I don't know about anybody else here, but when I see a speaker or somebody who is telling me, leading a meeting or something along those lines, carrying the message, somebody carrying the message, one of the things that touches me the most is when that individual appears spiritually connected and humble, yet at the same time assured about themselves. And I want to hit this point a little bit because, and this is not intended to speak negatively or to cast another meeting or another member in an unfavorable light, but at times we will hear certain talk or rhetoric in the rooms. And the thinking is that this talk is quote unquote good AA talk. And what I mean is Robbie's applauding. He knows where I'm going. And that talk goes along the lines of, well, what do I know? I'm just a sick alcoholic. Well, let me tell you, or or I did this, or I did that. Well, I'm just a sick alcoholic. What do you expect? And and there was this situation. How did I respond to that situation? I responded just like a sick alcoholic would. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that that is not the message our founders want us to have. The message our founders want us to have is one of quiet and humble self-confidence and self-assurance. And there are many things that I have faked over the years. Fake it till you make it. And I'm not going to get into, I don't want to punch that rhetoric too hard either. But I will say that there have been times where I have shared with my sponsor or my spiritual advisor, and I've let it rip. But then when I'm on the phone or I'm working with a newcomer, it's not that I want to hide how I'm doing from them, but I want to live in that self-confidence. I want to live in that self-assuredness because I know that's the message that our founders want us to carry. So anyway, from a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. The next sentence, two sentences rather, I have in green as direction or explanation. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. And then he drives it home. The last sentence in this paragraph is a big promise. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. And I think that is, if you want to hit the key points in this paragraph, this second paragraph, the key points, you could boil it down to two sentences. First, he accepted the plan outlined in this book. And second, a long time has passed with no return to alcohol. And now we're going to move on. Another promise. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. So this is like anticipation of a promise. He's setting it up with anticipation. So he says he's going to recount a story at the top of the page, but he actually gives us two. And this one is a little different. The patient made his own diagnosis. And this is the remainder of this paragraph. I'll just tell you. The first sentence is a promise. The remainder of the paragraph is warning. And I can imagine Dr. Silkworth conveying this story to his patients. And since he's obviously a good storyteller, he would probably infuse it with certain emotion. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. I want to take a quick poll. Just you don't have to use just a show of your hands. You don't have to unmute. You can unmute if you want, but now I have never hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. But there are many times when I have felt like I wanted to. So who's ever felt that way? So even though most of us don't have barns, we can relate to that. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort. And who can relate to that? Oh, you have a solution, but it's not going to work for me. And who has even felt that at times about Alcoholics Anonymous and its program, even knowing the program? This is just, I'm too sick for AA. Those are thoughts, those are the thoughts that our disease will commonly bring into our mind. But the story continues. He thought the treatment a waste of effort unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. The willpower. And understand, it took me a while reading this story in that sentence to understand what Dr. Silkworth was doing. He's setting up a counterexample, and a counterexample is an example of what not to do. So, because for a long time I read that and thought, yeah, I mean, I want the willpower, and AA gives me the willpower. And maybe some of us will use different words than willpower. I didn't use the word willpower. I used words like strong, smart, aware, in tune, self-aware. So I wanted assurance that I could be self-aware, or that I could be strong, or that I could be confident. And as I said, Dr. Silkworth positions that as a counterexample, meaning that this gentleman who hid in the barn is looking for the wrong, he's not looking for the correct thing. His and the rest, the next paragraph through to the bottom of this page, I have as a warning. His alcoholic problem was so complex, his depression so great, that we felt his only hope would be what we then called moral psychology. Well, first of all, again, who has ever felt like your problems are so complex and your depression was so great? And I remember coming in and thinking that I am just too screwed up for Alcoholics Anonymous. And maybe AA can help me with my drinking, because these people here in this room, in this meeting, they say they don't drink, and I believe them. But these people did not have the kind of problems that I have. I can't even describe my problems. They're so complex. I just get numb when I think about everything that's going on in my life and the conditions of my life. So that's how he felt. And Dr. Silkworth is saying, we thought that the only thing that could help him was moral psychology. So what I did, because for years I assumed I knew what moral psychology was until I admitted to myself, I have no idea what moral psychology is. So what did I do? I looked it up, and there we go. Okay, let me click over. Okay, you should be able to see that. I looked it up, and here is what moral psychology is. The study of an individual's values, judgment, motivation, and development for the purpose of eliminating self-deception. And that's what they thought that the solution might be for this gentleman. However, I will say something. If we think about the steps, if we think about our experience of the steps, we can think about how the steps do touch on all of those things, for sure. It touches upon our values. It touches upon our judgment. It touches upon our motivation and development. And the steps, through working the steps, we are freed from self-deception. However, moral psychology, I think what we'll see in a moment is, it's not that he's saying it's wrong. It's not an end in itself. Because he's going to give us the real solution in a moment. And we doubted if even that would have any effect. And that's all warning. And now if we turn the page, next sentence is green, which for direction. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. Let's hit the pause button and jump back a second. Let's go to the top of the previous page. The main question, the driving question in this section. What is the solution? Let's go to the next page. The first sentence. He became sold on the ideas contained in this book. That's the second time he is presenting the solution to us. And then the promise. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one. He is as fine, a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. Obviously, the language is a bit dated right there. It's definitely 1939 language. And of course, it's a little sexist, but we're not even going to go there. We're just going to take it in its context, in its time. But we get the point. At the time when this was written, for the audience it was written for, that example would have carried power. And so that's a promise. And now, in 2 short lines, Dr. Silkworth summarizes the entirety. He drives home the point, the main point, and he summarizes the entire program as he understands it with a simple illustration. And I have this in green for direction. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through. What he's saying is, I told you the solution twice. If you didn't get it, here it is again. One more time. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through. But why? And this is what, as I was reading this and thinking about this, I was so deeply moved by this next line statement that really I read for maybe even decades and glossed over. And though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. What opened that up for me and is going to, remember I mentioned to you folks that a couple weeks ago I decided to make the investment in a 1939 dictionary. And so I went to my trusty 1939 dictionary, and I wanted to understand, make sure I thoroughly understood, there we go, the words being used in the book. And there we go, from the 39 dictionary. Scoff, and though he came to scoff. It's a word we don't use a lot, but think about this. An expression of scorn or contempt, ridicule, derision. Has anybody ever been, especially in the drinking, been presented with a worthwhile suggestion and felt scorn, contempt, ridicule, or derision? Here, I'll raise 2 hands. Okay. To exhibit scorn or contempt, to treat or address with derision. And if you want to boil down the attitude that my alcoholism created in me, it would be that. And though he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. And as much as I thought I knew what prayer was, I looked it up from 1939. To ask earnestly, address or petition, ask with humility and reverence, supplicate, to make supplication to God. The words that jump out at me are humility and reverence. So what he is saying essentially is, in those last 2 lines, read this book and be transformed from contempt and derision to humility and reverence. Now, I have to say, today when I read those lines, it moves me very deeply. But I also have to say that when I came here, I wasn't quite there yet, because I had bottomed out on alcohol, but I had not bottomed out on alcoholism. And what I mean by that is I bottomed out on the drinking and the chaos from drinking, but I didn't have a full grasp of what the disease really was and how it impacted me. And even then, when I had that idea of the full impact, it took me a while to get to the point where I was fed up. Drinking or not drinking. So that, oh my word, I went 4 minutes over. So with that, I am going to, we come to the end, and I see Kathy has her hand up. So let's open it up. Questions, discussion, thoughts, direction. So yeah, Kathy, please go ahead.
Yeah, apologize for the video being off today, guys. But a couple of things jumped out at me right from the beginning. And I love the way you broke down his particular method of communication. Really, really great. But it struck me, he says things like, in his example, he frankly admitted and believed, there was no hope. So down a little further, we've got another guy gonna determined to die held up in a barn or whatever. Again, the delusion, the alcoholic thinks and feels and believes things that are simply not true, right? Even that, there is no hope. It's just a sense of being hopeless. I absolutely loved, the promises that he sprinkled in through here, which is, oh my God, there are people out there that have actually given up the drink and didn't have to return to it for quite a long time, whatever that means. But then you ended here, and this is what struck me, and I too won't read those 2 words the same way, I'm sure, in the future. But how yet he describes, to my mind, the transformation that takes place if we adhered to the book, the guidelines, the directions of the book, follow those steps as best we can. We literally go and we are transformed to a different line of thinking, not contempt, right? Not exhibiting scorn, not ridiculing, but we transform to this level of humility, reverence to the God of our understanding, that in fact guarantees I'm okay. So that's all I have to share. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Yes, Chris, please.
Good morning, everyone. Chris, alcoholic, and thank you so much. Thanks for getting that dictionary and framing it in the context of how it was written, because I certainly scoffed at oh, my disease will take me off the page with some of the wording, and it's just so helpful to have it in the context of um, anyway, the complete mental deterioration and where I was going without this message. And I'm grateful that I have received this message today. And this is the message that I get to carry and reminded of that I go certain places to deal with certain things. And that when I'm here, what my purpose is to carry this message that's been carried to me and has literally changed my life. I have people say, well, what are you doing? And I mean, this is after decades, but it's being exposed to this message as in a new way. And it's fresh. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but just to quickly say, I mean, they had me on Aricept, which is for mental deterioration. They, where I was going, left to my own devices, this is what works for me. And this is where I need to be. And the message, I pray to God every day, please help me carry this message. So anyway, I just thank you all for being here and continuing to do this work and share your experience, strength, and hope. Have a great day.
Chris, thank you so much. Brother Robbie, please.
Thank you, David. Good morning, family. Robbie, alcoholic. And David, what I love that you brought out, that first of all, the 1939 dictionary, great stuff. I've already got that written down. My spiritual advisor suggests get a 1939 dictionary. Well, you didn't suggest it, but I heard that. So, and I love what you brought out, brother, about scoff and how that means no derision. What? Like, I love that. So, I'm a fellow that's been in AA, as you know, I mean, for 39 years, right? And the one thing I stay away from is, there it is, it's coming up, scoff, derision. Yeah, like, I don't want to have that derision, like, even in groups, like, I've been accused of drinking the AA lemonade, David. You know that. I've been accused of being a cheerleader for AA and all that stuff. And listen, if you're going to accuse me of that stuff, I'm okay with it. You with me? Like, that's cool. I go with the flow, right? That's what I got taught. I row. Yeah, and I'll end with this, David. First of all, thank you so much. I love that definition. I never had that. I always thought it was just made fun of. I didn't realize that derision, that humility, could also be extrapolated from that word, as Bill had that dictionary back then. And I'll just say this, and I'll end with this. If I'm rowing the boat, right, I don't have time to rock it. I let others in AA rock the boat right, Donna? I let others rock the boat as much as they want. Go ahead, go. God will handle this, and I just continue to row. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Robbie. Robbie, you drove home I think a key point here that I know is very much the case in your story, because I think I know you at least a little bit, and that I think Dr. Silkworth tries to convey in what we read today is that, see, for a long time, what I did was I sought for an easier, softer way. So I would watch and listen for the what the winners did, and then I would mirror I like a chameleon. I would try to be like them. The only problem was they were the winners, quote unquote winners, were like that because they had experienced the spiritual transformation, and I was doing it as just a means of parroting. So there was no inner component to my attempts to be humble, prayerful, whatever. And so I think what is really driven home today is this notion, because remember, he's talking about read the book. The message is in the book. And what that message says is that this transformation will happen not because we will it, it comes because we are transformed through God's grace. Sean, please go right ahead.
Morning, thanks, David. Sean, alcoholic. The first time I read through the doctor's opinion, I was probably 5 days sober, but I actually underlined that last sentence as well as so powerful because, of course, the new person coming to read this is going to approach everything with skepticism, right? I mean, we're like hardwired to be, or at least I'm hardwired to be, a little paranoid and skeptical of, I'm not going to rise out of this like a phoenix coming out of the ashes necessarily, but the promise here is, yeah, you're probably coming to this with skepticism, and all that we're hoping is that you remain to pray. So just some spiritual progress, right? Not spiritual perfection. And that was so welcoming to me that I remember taking a deep breath after that and just saying, okay, all right. I mean, maybe some good could come at this. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We are at 7:13, and so we are getting near the end of things. I just want to ask you, are there any final comments or any burning desires or just any... Yes, Donna, please, go right ahead.
Good morning, David. Good morning. Donna, alcoholic. Would you mind just popping the definition of moral psychology into the screen share for me?
I will.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Hold it into the screen. There we go. And Kathy, yes, I see your hand. Did you want to...
Yeah, so Donna just put in the definition of derision that someone passed along to her, John, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a 1938 definition of that term?
No, I looked it up, and
did you?
I did, and it has both. It has moral and it has psychology, but it did not. And psychology, it just said, if I'm remembering correctly, it was something like very kind of direct, like the study of mental states or mental health, and
Great.
so there was nothing that really illuminated that, and unfortunately, I had no alternative but to go to where I get most of my answers, which is the Google machine. And so that's how I found that. And so there we go. We have that. So I want to thank, well, first of all, hooray, celebration. We finished the doctor's opinion. We find after 16 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, we are at page 1. And so we start next week with War Fever Running High. We start with Bill's story. And so that should be an adventure. And so if you're just in the mood, getting started in the mood for another meeting, I'm going to invite you all to join us at my home group, Good Morning Avalon. And I believe that information is in the chat for that. Also, if you want to get a weekly reminder for this meeting, which comes out in text form, and it has Zoom links, and it also has links to our online archive, because every meeting here is recorded audio only, so we remain within the traditions, and it's archived. So today's meeting will be up later today on our YouTube channel, so you can listen to or invite a friend. And I think that's about it. Did I forget anybody or forget anything? So with that, I want to thank you all for being here, and I'm going to ask you all to join me now in closing out this meeting and moving on to our day with the Lord's Prayer.